Hey, Trailblazers, this is Jason, your host of the Trailblazing Texas podcast. Before we jump into our latest episode, I've got some incredible news for you. Are you gearing up for your next big hike or backpacking trip? Well, we at Trailblazing Texas podcast have partnered up with Trekker Joe's, the ultimate Texas outfitter, to bring you something I feel absolutely special. Listeners, you of the Trailblazing Texas podcast can now get a one-time 15% off their gear purchases at Trekker Joe's. That's right, whether you're a first-time customer at Trekker Joe's or a repeat customer like me, you can save big and hit the trails well prepared. So upon checkout, use code TTP15 to claim your 15% discount and in the process support an amazing local Texas business. So happy trails, and don't forget to tell your hiking buddies. Now on with the episode. Welcome to the Trailblazing Texas podcast, where we embark on a journey through our diverse Texas landscapes and breathtaking trails while always engaging with our amazing Texas hiking community. So settle in, tighten up those bootlaces, and get ready for the thrilling tales awaiting for you on this episode. So what inspired you to hike the Continental Divide Trail, and kind of really what was your thought process in making that your first long trail?
So probably what really inspired me, I guess the starting from the get-go was when COVID hit and it shut all the parks down, and I'm not the type of person to make a reservation of any sort. That's like I'm last minute, let's get up and go. Like right now, you couldn't do that when COVID was going on. So it's like you had to make that week or two reservation just to go. So I was like, all right, well, what other options do I have here in Texas? All of a sudden, I stumbled across the Lone Star Trail. Well, actually, I think I came across the Sam Houston National Forest first. I'm like, all right, there's a bunch of hiking trails there. And all of a sudden, I saw there was a 100-mile trail going through there. And I'm like, oh, that's pretty sweet. Let's look into this or whatever. And I started seeing where it was a backpacking trail. I've never backpacked a day in my life. I've always just done day hikes, go out there and walk through the woods a little bit and then come home and that's it. So I was like, oh, let's look into this. Let's look up some YouTube videos. So I started looking at YouTube videos or whatever, and I ended up making, I guess, judgment calls of what gear to buy. Ended up buying a whole backpack of stuff or whatever, and I ended up doing the Lone Star Trail. When I did that 100-mile hike, I remember getting back to my car and I told myself, I'm never doing this ever again. And driving standard with my noodle legs all the way back to San Antonio because I just walked 100 miles first time ever. So I get back. I don't know what it is. I guess you love the punishment or the challenge or something. I started looking into the long trails or whatever. Started looking at the Continental Divide, PCT, Appalachian Trail, and everybody said that the Appalachian Trail was like the best one to start out on. So I was like, all right. And I took vacation time at work, and I went and hiked from the approach trail at Amicalola Falls all the way to Mountain Crossings. It just started pouring down rain that day. It just kind of came to me where I was just like, I'm on my vacation time and I'm going to be walking in the rain for several days. And I'm just like, nah, this sucks. So I came home. I started looking up the PCT and the Continental Divide Trail. And I was listening to people's, I guess, theories or thoughts on people hiking long trails. And they say that most through hikers only do one long trail. So I was like, all right, well, if that really is the truth, like which trail am I going to want to look back on the rest of my life? Like, I'm glad I did that trail or something that's going to be super fun and exactly what I wanted to do. And the Continental Divide was up my alley. It's like, it's not going to be overcrowded like the Appalachian Trail. You got beautiful views all the way around from beginning to end. That's something I didn't like about the AT is you're literally walking through the woods. It's a walk through the woods, as the saying goes. And the Continental Divide Trail is nothing like that. You're exposed 110% of the time. I guess that's what really kind of inspired me to do the Continental Divide Trail, just because that was the trail that has everything in it. It's like you got your desert walk, your mountain walk, walking through the pine trees, essentially walking through the forest and stuff like that. And it's you make your own adventure. I forgot how it goes. I think they say that No Continental Divide Trail hiker hikes the same exact trail all the way through because there's so many variations you can take and alternates. So that's what I liked. I'm definitely a type of person where I want to make my own adventure. And I think that's like the main thing that kind of framed the framework around me wanting to hike the Continental Divide Trail. And I loved it. It kind of probably screwed up my hike of the Appalachian Trail just because I saw the freedom you can have on the Continental Divide Trail versus the Appalachian Trail. It's like you're kind of scolded if you walk off the trail. It's like you have so many purists on the Appalachian Trail to where it's like, oh, well, you didn't pass that white blaze back there. You didn't hike the Appalachian Trail. It's like, shut up.
So, did you have any reservations starting the CDT, meaning that, going into it, that this is probably the most wild, the most, I don't know if you could say difficult, but it's got to be, I think you can argue the point, the most difficult long trail because the exposure, because you're not going through a ton of towns and cities, and you really gotta, to me, like, have an idea of what you're doing. So did you have any kind of nervousness or like, oh crap, what am I doing before you started?
Uh, I don't know if I was necessarily nervous about it, and I did know all the dangers because I was already preparing to like carrying a pistol with me, and I carried a pistol with me all the way from. Well, I didn't have my pistol with me in between the monument. Man, Crazy Cook. There we go. Crazy Cook Monument and Lordsburg, New Mexico, because my pistol hasn't arrived yet. But like when I arrived there in Lordsburg, I took the truck to the border the next morning, and then I hiked back to Lordsburg, and it took about 4 or 5 days, and that's where I got my pistol. I already knew the dangers going into it, anywhere from potentially meeting cartel members on the border all the way to like hitchhiking and then going into grizzly bear country in Wyoming and stuff like that. So I knew all the dangers, and I guess that's what I kind of liked about it. And that's where I think it kind of drew me to it as well, where they also say that if you can hike the Continental Divide Trail, you can do the two other long trails. So it's like that one has everything in it. And it kind of is true. I would say the Continental Divide Trail is a tough trail, but is not as physically demanding as the Appalachian Trail, doing endless puds, just pointless ups and downs all day long. They both have their mental challenges or whatever. They're definitely completely different trails. Some people try to compare them, and it's just that's the thing is that they're completely different all the way around. So maybe that's what kind of drew me to it as well, was knowing that it's going to be different all the way through. That's what I loved about New Mexico and Wyoming as being my favorite states, is where uh, New Mexico, you start on the desert floor and then you go up into the high desert, and then the high desert turns into what Colorado looks like. So it slowly transforms. And same thing with Wyoming. It's like crossing the Colorado border. All of us were praying that Wyoming was going to be flat. And it's like we all cursed Wyoming when we crossed the border because it's like, damn it, it's not flat. This sucks or whatever. And then when you start getting closer to Rawlins, Wyoming, that's when it starts flattening out. And then when you leave Rawlins, that's when you get into the Great Basin, and it's flat, and it's nothing but desert sand, and it's just completely different. And then you go into the winds, and then you're in like one of the most beautiful mountain ranges, as some people will say, up there in the winds. And then I wouldn't say it flattens out, but it's not as bad afterwards. And then you get into Idaho, and then Idaho definitely has some puds. Don't recommend it.
Yeah.
And then Montana, you get into the pine trees where you're pretty much walking in the forest until you hit the China Wall, and then you get into Glacier National Park, and then it's just mind blowing how beautiful Glacier National Park is, and it's just a perfect ending.
Yeah. So can you just kind of describe the overall experience you had on the CDT?
Oh, it was magnificent. I loved it. I loved all the people that I met, all the friends that I made. I still am in contact with everybody I made friends with on the Continental Divide Trail. I actually have a friend named Low Branch that is currently hiking the Continental Divide Trail, and he's
Hmm.
actually redoing a hike. Uh, I hiked with him on my 2022 through hike all the way from. Well, I actually met him in the toaster house. We were both messed up or whatever. I had a big old swollen blister on my foot in the toaster house, and then he actually shared the bunk with me. I think he said that he had an ingrown toenail or something like that, if I remember right. And he cut it, and I guess he was just waiting for the swelling to go down. Anyways, so we talked to each other there and became friends there, but we ended up hiking out at different times. Then we ran into each other again in Grants, New Mexico. And if I remember correctly, he was coming out of the Mexican food restaurant, whatever, and we started talking or whatever, and he was taking off. And he's like, hey, you want to hike with each other? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Why not? So we hiked with each other all the way from Grants, New Mexico, all the way up to Leadville, Colorado is like when he actually had to finally call it quits. But he was already going in and out in Salida because you figure that his injury would take place in the mountains. But when we got into Salida, Colorado, he got into the hot pool and he slipped and hit his hip on the side of the pool.
Oh,
And it's a bad thing or whatever. I'm just laughing at it though because he was telling everybody that he's like, nah, I got injured on the mountain or whatever. I'm like, no, he didn't.
hey, you got to make it sound, dangerous and
uh, but he also did have another injury or whatever that probably, I guess, like crippled him even more when we were. I can't remember what pass we were at, but there was a pass that we were trying to slide down on the snow on, and his leg, the top of his foot, ended up sliding underneath a log to where it like overextended his Achilles. Um, so that was on the same leg that he had fallen onto the hot tub. So then I think it was that next morning he woke up, he couldn't even stand up, and I had to help him up, and his leg was like kind of turning black, and I was like, "Yeah, you got something broken, dude." And man, I can't remember every detail about it, but I remember he was limping, and I told him you're probably better off hitching into town from right here. And I think he ended up walking into Tin Cup. I think that's the name of the town, Tin Cup, Colorado, or something like that. And I thought that was the end of his hike or whatever. Well, I'm walking up. Man, I can't remember the name of the mountain, but I remember we crossed a river called the Texas River in Colorado, and these two bikers came across me or whatever. They stopped and told me like, "Hey, your buddy's up ahead looking for you," or whatever. I was like, "What are you talking about? How do you know that he's looking for me?" It's like, "Oh, he said like what you were dressed in." It's like, "Hey, if you see him, tell him I'm up ahead or something like that." I'm like, who else would I know? I was like, there's no way it's Low Branch. It's like I just saw him this morning getting off the trail. Anyways, I finally start climbing the mountain or whatever. I eventually catch up to him or whatever. And in a sense, I'm kind of mad because I was just like, dude, you could barely even walk this morning. And he just walked up this mountain. I was like, are you kidding me? Anyways, it's just like, I ended up just, I was like glad to see him, of course, or whatever. But we ended up getting to Lake Ann Pass, and that's where we had to glissade down the side of the mountain. We had no snow experience at all. If anything, I almost died in the San Juans because I almost slid off the side of a mountain. And I went from doing that, being terrified of snow, to like literally glissading down the side of a mountain because a girl named Midnight Chocolate gave me some pointers at the top of the mountain. She's like, "Yeah, just stick your ice axe into the snow and kick step into the snow, and you'll be good." I'm like, "All right." So I went down. I remember yelling. It's actually on video. I have a video of it on YouTube where I'm yelling up at Low Branch. It's like, "It's all right, Low Branch. Only had one heart attack." And anyways, he decided he wasn't going to go back down, but he also had a messed up leg. Like I don't know how he was walking on it. So, anyways, that was his ending point right there of the CDT. And I met him back in town in Leadsville. That's when he got off. But that's just like you asked me. It's like, what are my thoughts or memories of the CDT? It's like that's what I think about a lot the most. And then later on, that's when I actually started hiking with my tramley, Gumpin Juniper, and we call him we called him Long Nose Pete, but he liked being called Adam, so we call him both. And then there was another guy named Info. We all ended the trail with him. I primarily keep in contact with Gumpin Juniper more than the others, but we still text each other every now and then. And that's who I finished the trail with. It's like those are the ones that scared. I had my scary experience with the grizzly bear with them. It's like I camped with them, had awesome moments with them, shared a lot of cool moments with them, like funny moments too. Like we're in Glacier National Park and we were all sharing a campground. And Juniper was one of the handful of girls that was out there, and she was sleeping in the center of a bunch of guys just camping around her. And anyways, like all of us guys were over here farting all night and or whatever, and she could hear us all night. She said it was like a whole symphony of farts going on. Just like I said, there's all kinds of memories of that going on, and like keeping the campers up around us, whatever, because we're all sitting there talking around the campfire, just talking about experiences getting up there. And there was a just a caring guy that was next to us or whatever, just telling us it's 10 o'clock, go to sleep. It's like, all right, whatever. Yeah, just awesome memories. It's like that's why I talked about with my buddy Low Branch, because he also hiked the AT back in 2006 or 2007. He loved that trail, but I told him, I was like, dude, it's like the AT had nothing for me compared to the CDT. It's like I can't even count all the friends I made on the CDT versus I can probably count everybody I hiked with, on one hand on the AT. But maybe that comes from it being my first hike. Everybody, I've talked to a lot of people, and everybody seems to love their first through hike the most. And maybe that's what it was. The AT wasn't my first experience; it was the CDT. We'll see what the PCT holds for me in 2026 if I am blessed to hike it.
Yeah. So, what would you say are some of your most breathtaking views that you encountered on the CDT?
Colorado had some really good views, but that's just stereotypical because you're up there on top of the 14ers and stuff like that. But I think the best, most forgettable or unforgettable views were in the Winds or Glacier National Park. It's just a lot of people say the Winds was their favorite, but I think I have better memories, and I think it's more memories of being with my tramley in Glacier. But Glacier also had some really good views. Trying to think of like, uh, I think my buddy Cash, he would probably tell me that the Winds were the best because I remember he was up there on top of a mountain. He got up to the top before me, and I walk up. I see him, and he's over here wiping tears away from his eyes, and he's all, "It's fucking beautiful, man." I'm like, "Are you crying?" He's like, "No, no, no," and I'm like, "It's all right, it's all right. Yeah, it is beautiful." He also did that. It's like I don't know. It's kind of one of those moments where I kind of wish I did cry. I always thought like when I finished the Continental Divide Trail, the Appalachian Trail, that I was gonna cry. Just because all the suffering and the pain and everything else that I put up with. But I don't know. It's like I just got up there and touched the monuments, and that was kind of the end. Versus where he touched them, and it's like he kind of broke down. I was just like, man, am I like emotionally empty? Or I just haven't come to the realization that this is the end or something. I don't know. I kind of question myself, like, why didn't I cry?
You know, I had a quest to climb or to hike the 10 highest peaks in Texas, and some of it was climbing. And I just knew Pratt was the last one, and this was like a 7-year journey and lots of failure. And some of these, like the quad and some of the off trail peaks, you don't really want to do it alone, and you also want to make sure you have a team that's experienced.
Yeah,
So lots of failures putting people together, for successful attempts, and blood, sweat, and tears. And I just knew on the way to Pratt that, I was just going to ball because we're almost there. I can see it. This is going to be a reality. I get to Pratt, and it was like, oh, cool. What's next? Like I was really. I wanted to cry. Like I wanted to, like, oh my god, but no, it was just like, all right, what are we doing next, guys?
that's pretty much how it was for me. It's like I really didn't even like bash my buddy Cash like when I saw him crying when he touched Mount Katahdin, like the sign or whatever, and I just saw like how rich he was with emotion. I'm just like, it was just another day to me. I was just like, I don't know, like is something wrong with me? Or it's like I know this isn't the end, because I also made the comment to him when that happened. He's like, well, we're more than halfway to the end of the Triple Crown. And he's like, yep. So I was like, maybe that's what it was. Just my mind wasn't ready to finish yet. Maybe. I don't know. PCT, maybe I could start crying at the Washington Canadian border.
And I think probably if I look back at it, what probably facilitated me not as being as emotional is a high school friend of mine lost his son due to cancer, and his son had graduated from Texas A&M, and shortly after that he found out he had cancer and passed away.
Oh man.
So I took my friend out to the Guadalupe Mountains to hike the highest peak in Texas and do a lot of other cool hikes just to get him out, show him that, man, you can get through this, you can accomplish a lot. Like, we were heading out to Pratt because that was one of the hikes, and we went up Bear Canyon, and of course, Bear Canyon is a bitch to get up, and he'd never hiked before, so he was wiped out. And so we leave the trail, we get to this little saddle, and what's hilarious is I'm looking north, not realizing that's not Pratt and thinking that it's Pratt. And I'm like, oh man, like it doesn't even look like you can climb it. So it's part of Freeholy Ridge, but it's like, man, I'm looking at it going, there's no way we can get up any of this. And I'm looking at the map and I'm like, yeah, it's right there. Not realizing I have my map turned. And so we're like, and it's probably 30s, at night it's probably in the low 30s. It's probably in the 50s right then. And we're not dressed for, being able to head back, like trying to reach Pratt and then head back to camp at night. I don't have a headlamp. And so I didn't realize it would take us this long to get to the spot. So we're in the saddle, we're sitting there, and I just like, hey man, we got to call it and start heading back. And, we were going to bury a little piece of a shirt from his son that he passed away in. So, we didn't make it to Pratt. We're in the saddle. And what was cool is we were standing in the only area in that saddle that was dirt. Everything else is rock. So we had like a little, about the size of a stamp of his shirt. And so we're right there in the dirt, spectacular. We dig a big hole, bury it, and head back. And so when we were heading out to Pratt for that's the 10th highest peak, we got to that spot, and we had like a little rock cairn. And man, when I got to that spot, I found it, because I had it marked on the GPS, or the coordinates, and I just started crying like a baby. It was so bad that Sam Henning and Sam's brother were with me, and they were like, they just kind of walked away, like, "Oh God, like what's going on?" Like, it was bad. I couldn't stop, and I can't explain it. I just sobbed and sobbed, and so then when we hit Pratt, like maybe all the emotion was just out of me, or that kind of took it out of me. But yeah, so yeah, when we got to Pratt, I was just like, all right, let's go. Like, what are we doing next? So if you kind of just look at I don't know what the right word is, your experience on the CDT, what would you consider what were your main challenges that you faced while hiking it?
I guess something that's kind of coming to my mind since like we were talking about the whole crying thing, or whatever. Like I don't know that they say like if you have demons before doing these long trails, they're definitely going to come out when you're doing these long trails. And I wouldn't say I have demons or anything like that, but like it just brings the thought to mind. Like where I remember I was in New Mexico, and it's like I don't know why. Like it was my emotions were hitting me in the beginning. Like the heat was hitting me, and it's just like I was questioning myself. Like why am I doing this? Why am I separating myself from my friends and family and stuff like that? And like it would emotionally get to me, like where I'm walking down the trail and I'm crying, and I'm just like, why am I crying? I'm doing this to myself. And when I started the Continental Divide Trail, it's something I always kept in mind. Like I still remember it when I was talking to the guy driving us to the border, that I told him, I was like, I'm going to do this trail until I'm not having fun anymore. And I'm just going to be done if I'm not having fun. Because I went in with the mindset of already knowing that I'm probably not going to finish it. Just statistically, I'm not going to finish it. But he told me, he's like, well, it's like when I did my through hike, it's like that's what I did. It's like I told myself I'm going to hike until I'm not having fun anymore. And I had fun all the way through. So I guess that's a challenge you can say that I had, was like, I guess getting over, I guess kind of like what we mentioned before the podcast. It's like your diet, your first couple of weeks, it's going to be difficult because you're transitioning. And maybe that's what it was. That was my transition of not seeing my family as frequently or not talking to them as frequently to where then I went into that drive mode to where it didn't bother me all that much towards the tail end. It's like I didn't start thinking about tail end of the hike just because at that point everybody's spent. Everybody's just running on fumes, just wanting to touch the monument and go home. You want the journey to keep going on, but you're just tired of walking and everything else, and you want to see your family. You want to go back into normal life in a sense of being able to see everybody that you used to seeing. You don't want to go back to your 9 to 5 job and everything else. Like you want to keep the journey going, but you're tired of doing the same repetition of like going into town, washing your clothes as fast as possible, resupplying or whatever, then going back out the next day. So the repetition gets old. That's just my opinion, though. Another challenge I probably came across is getting used to being comfortable around snow. Snow didn't bother me at first, but then when I almost died walking on snow, well, I just say almost died walking on snow that was on switchbacks going down the side of a mountain, then that kind of like created a fear anytime I walked over snow on the side of a mountain because I saw how fast it'll take you out, and there was several times where, especially in Colorado, mainly Colorado, where you're you're literally like walking on goat trails, like where the trail's no more than 6 inches wide, and if you fall, there's nothing to grab onto. Like I was just mentioning about my buddy Low Branch, he's leaving Leadsville, and I told him I can't remember exactly where it's at, but I told him you're getting ready to come up on some sketchy sections right there. It's like you're literally walking across spots where probably multiple people have died, and I don't know. It's like one of those things you kind of, being that we don't live in Colorado, we don't hear about it or how frequent probably hikers die or get lost. But I'm like, I guarantee you that's where people have died because even guys that were like special forces and stuff like that I was talking to on the trail, they were even scared in those sections. One of the guys that I can't remember his trail name, but he was known on the trail because he was hiking with like a blonde German Shepherd, and he had like tattoos of like parachutes all over his legs. If I remember correctly, I think he was airborne, and I remember him talking about it where he said like, "Oh, dude, that was a section like where I didn't even want to look down because if you tripped, you died." So that was a challenge there too. I guess I kind of thought I don't have a fear of heights, but like when all that was going on, I thought I had a fear of heights. And I remember another hiker telling me, he's like, "That's not a fear of heights. That's a fear of death." I was like, "It's like you die, you fall, you die. There is no questionable like you might live, like not you died." So that was a challenge there too. Getting over the mental part. There was a lot of mental challenges with heights. Like going up to Grace Peak, I ended up taking a shortcut, and it was a shortcut. I don't know if I regret taking it because of the memories that I have of it. But in the moment climbing up, I was like, wow, this is a really dumb route to go.
So you're talking about the Grays and Tory?
Yeah, the 14er.
Are you talking about that shortcut that, like, let's say if you did Grays and then you go and do Tories and you come back down and you don't want to do Grays again, it's that little traverse that kind of it's between Grays and Tory, and it's not it connects to the main trail up to Grays, but it's like a little.
Oh, you're probably talking about the spine.
Well, it's in that saddle, but it's below the trail that goes from Grays to Torrey. It's like you go from Grays to Torrey, and then you go down Torrey's, and then there's like a little. You have the saddle, and then it goes below the saddle, and it connects to the main trail up to Grays, and it's so you don't have to do Grays again.
That might be the actual Continental Divide Trail, potentially. The one I did, you literally climb up the other side of Grays Peak.
Oh, okay.
Pretty much like what the story was is there was another spot there going to. So I'm trying to think of how that day went, but I just to get to the story though, I got to the split in the trail where you were going to go up to Gray's Peak, but I was looking at how much mileage it was and how much elevation gain it was, so whatever. So I was sitting there just taking a break, thinking I was like, all right, am I going to camp here tonight or keep on going because I'm exhausted? And I think it was already probably like noon or something like that, and I was thinking about potential rainstorms and everything else getting up there on top of the mountain. So I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden, this couple walks up, And I just start small talking with them, whatever. And they said they're there to do Grace Peak, and they keep walking straight forward. And I asked them, I was like, hey, well, if y'all are doing Grace Peak, why are you going forward instead of going to the right there? And they looked at the map. It's like, oh yeah, we can go that way. And so, anyways, they walk off, and maybe like a minute or two later, they come back out. And I was like, is that the wrong way or what happened? It's like, oh, well, that will go to Grace Peak, but that's the long way. I was like, there's a shortcut? So, anyways, I was like, man, I'm going to follow y'all. Y'all tell me about the shortcut or whatever. And they just kept on saying, like, no, yeah, we're just here to bag it real quick. They had like little day packs on or whatever. And I was like, all right, this should be quick, as fast as they're talking about it. So, anyways, I follow them to the edge of the canyon that I guess that's at the back end of Grace Peak. I couldn't tell you which direction it was. I just remember it was a canyon, and there was like a little mining camp at the bottom of it or something like that going on. And anyways, I literally watched them go up to the top of Grace Peak. Like I physically sat there and watched them go up to Grace Peak and come back down because I just wanted to verify that's what they were doing. So, anyways, the guy comes back down and he tells me, "Oh, dude, it's easy or whatever. It's like just make sure when you go up, just hang to the left because if you go right, it's all snow packed in or whatever." So I was like, "All right, cool." So he talked about it and didn't stress about anything or whatever. And anyways, I start going up. The trail is so steep, like if I stood all the way up, I'd fall all the way backwards. And I'm over here doing this with
Oh
like a big old pack.
man.
And like I want to say probably at the time, my pack probably was 30, 40 pounds, probably somewhere in there. I'm climbing up and I get to the top and it was a false summit, whatever. I thought that was the peak of Grace Peak that I was looking at. And I get up and I'm just already shitting bricks because everything's just talus rock around you. And it's like the portion that I climbed up, it was nothing but talus rock. So it's like if I fell off there, at least there was some giant rocks that would stop me or whatever. Well, when I get to the trail or whatever, to the left side, it's nothing but just straight talus all the way down. And I'm just like, holy crap. And I was like, this is some scary shit right here. I've never done this. I was like, I'm from Texas. I was like, I've never done anything like this. Anyway, so I started walking on that trail and same thing, like I said earlier, like this trail that I'm walking on is, I don't know, probably barely 6 inches wide. And I just remember feeling like James Bond on that section of that trail, like when I'm over here hugging the trail, like walking sideways or whatever, like I'm on the side of a skyscraper or whatever. And I just remember getting to a big rock and hugging it or whatever. And I remember telling God too, I was like, I swear, baby Jesus, like, please let me live this moment. I'll go back to church. I swear. And it's like I just remember grabbing that rock and holding on to it, and I was just like, "Oh my god!" Whew. And I got up to Grace Peak, and I was like, "All right, what a relief!" And then I had to deal
Oh
with the Dallas
man.
rocks going back down to the parking lot. That was pretty slick too. That wasn't scary, but that was not easy dealing with all that talus going down from Grace Peak. Trying not to slip and bust it.
Yeah, I got caught, that little to get back down from Torrey's and not wanting to do Grays again. It was a snow traverse, and oh man, the pictures make it look like nothing, but man, I tell you, I was so scared. And you're stepping on, it's like probably maybe about 12 inches wide path, and if you slip, you're off the mountain. Like you're not stopping. It was that steep.
Yep.
And I just remember turning my back, so I was facing the upside of the mountain, turned my back to the drop, and I would just like sidestepped, and I had my trekking poles, and I would just stick them in the snow, step, step, stick them in the snow, step, step. Oh man, I was dying. And Sam was with me. He came in from New Mexico, and he's just like do 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 do, like no big deal. There was a lady in front of us that we caught up with. She was from the town that I'm from, or where I live by. And she was also like really scared and nervous because we don't have a lot of snow down here. So we all kind of did it together and made it. But yeah, that was
Yeah, you talking about your trekking poles, you're making me think about when I almost died, like in the San Juans. It's like I was doing the same thing. I was digging those trekking poles in there, and it just shows how much the snow broke because of my weight or whatever. I bent my trekking pole, so my trekking pole didn't stop me. It just my trekking pole bent, and then it followed me down the mountain.
oh gosh.
It's like that's why like I had so much trust issues. Like I can't even trust my trekking pole to save me.
were you, I guess this is a two-parter, were you, when you were starting the CDT, did you already have an idea about possible wildlife that you encountered? And also, can you tell us about some of the cool wildlife experiences that you had?
So I definitely knew I was going to come across some wildlife. I just didn't know when and where. I had heard about people coming across black bears in the Gila of New Mexico, but I don't know. I'm not really scared of black bears. It's not saying that they can't kill you or harm you. It's just they're less likely to do something to you. Uh, but wildlife, the biggest fear I guess I came across in New Mexico was like the rattlesnakes. It's like that's something I thought about too. Same thought process on the AT. It's like if I get bit out here, there's nobody around, and it might take quite a few hours to get for somebody to get to me, even if I hit the SOS button and stuff like that. So New Mexico, that's kind of like what the biggest fear was. There was the rattlesnakes. The only other animals that I can kind of think of that I saw were like javelinas that were chewing on cactus or whatever, but they ran away from me as soon as I saw them. I really didn't see my first black bear until I got to trying to think it was Wyoming, and I saw him in Yellowstone, and he had no fear of us. That was kind of a little intimidating right there, showing that they're humanized or whatever you want to call it. They're is it dehumanized? Whatever. They're used to humans. I'm trying to think. So that's how New Mexico was. Colorado, I saw moose and moose.
Yeah, they'll kill you.
Yeah, well, that's what I was about to say. Is like seeing them didn't necessarily put fear in me, but it was knowing the statistics that you're more likely to get killed by a moose than a bear. That's what kind of put the fear into me. And like bringing up the whole, like when I was trying to meet up with my buddy going across that Texas River in Colorado, that's when I first saw my first moose or whatever, and it scared the crap out of me just because it looked like a horse running across the forest. I'm like, what the hell was that? Is that a horse? And and anyways, I was like, oh, we're in Colorado. Yeah, that was a moose. And then there was another time that had to have been the second time we came across moose when I was with my buddy Cash. So I started hiking with my buddy Cash in Winter Park, Colorado. And I want to say it wasn't too far after we left Winter Park when we ran to a mama moose and her calf. And that was my first time ever experiencing one where they just stared you down like they were on the trail with us. And my buddy Cass is from Canada, so he sees moose all the time. I think they even call them donkey or swamp donkeys or something like that. So as a term, like they see them all the time or whatever. They're whatever. Anyways, like I remember experiencing that with them where he was like, "All right, we're looking face to face with the moose." He's like, "All right, let's slowly back up and give them their room." And I remember just backing up or whatever, and I remember having the thought of wanting to get my pistol out, but I couldn't tell you if I pulled my pistol out just in case they charged. But we were probably no more than probably, I don't know, probably 50 feet from them because it was like a turn in the trail. We were just walking and then we took like a sharp right turn and it was like they were right there looking at us. They were obviously walking up the trail because it was the easiest way for them to get around as big as they are. And anyway, so we just backed off and they left us alone. And so that was probably like the first scary wildlife encounter, just because the unpredictability. You didn't know what they were gonna do or how they were gonna react in that situation. And then trying to think. And then probably after that, you could probably skip all the way to Montana on that. And that's when I actually started seeing more bears. Because, like I said, I saw the first one in Wyoming, but he had no fear of us at all. And then Wyoming, that's when same thing that my buddy Cash also taught me too. Just I guess something you do in bear country, you always yell out loud, kind of giving the bear a warning that I'm coming through, so you're not scaring them. And I remember I was leaving. I can't remember the name of the guy's built or not his building, his company or whatever, but he's outside of Lincoln, Montana, and he kind of lives like the Unabomber, where he looks like he has like a Unabomber setup building where it just looks like it's just literally four walls put up, and but you walk inside there and it's a whole gear thing. Like it just about anything you're looking for gear, he's got it. Anyways, just leaving there. Well, that's kind of a little bit funny. When I was actually there at his gear store, I saw a squirrel eating a squirrel, and I'm like, man, squirrels eat squirrels. I was like, it's a man eat world out, or man eating world out here, or man eat man, or whatever. And So right after leaving that was a trip. I've never seen a squirrel eating a squirrel. Not saying that's impossible, but right after leaving there, the guy had actually physically told me that lived inside that building. He had never seen a black bear around his building before. So I was like, huh, I guess they're not in the area. Well, I don't think I even walked 2 miles and I'm over there doing bear beware, what my buddy Cash told me. I'm yelling to the top of my lungs and I got a deep voice, so my voice carries. And anyways, I guess I scared the crap out of a black bear or whatever. It was the biggest black bear I've ever seen. Comes running across the trail from me. I'm like, holy shit, that thing's huge. And I'm like, I'm gonna be sleeping around these guys tonight. It's like, holy crap. But anyways, it just showed right there that that black bear was more scared of me than I was of him. And then I came across another black bear that I think he was walking down the trail as I was going up at Pintler's. I think it was in Pintler's Wilderness or something like that. Remember, it was just outside. It was either before getting to Anaconda, Montana, or just outside of Anaconda, Montana. I can't remember now. But that was another one. I was walking up the mountain. I'm more focused on my breathing because I'm going up an incline, and I'm breathing so much. It's like I'm not yelling out, giving like a bear warning or whatever. And all of a sudden, I look up and there's a black bear looking right at me. But like, as soon as we made eye contact, we scared the crap out of each other, and he shot off down the side of the mountain. So that was another just scary moment because you didn't know how he was going to react. And this is also like where they were talking about there was a heavy presence of grizzly bears in that area. So thank God it wasn't a grizzly bear. Yeah, the only grizzly bear I actually ran into was in Glacier National Park. That was like a whole different story by itself because we were walking down, my family and I, we were walking down uh, to, man, what was the name of that waterfall? I think it was like a glacier fed waterfall or whatever. That was like the best cold water I've ever drank in my life. But there was a couple coming up and they told us, like, hey, just an FYI, there's a grizzly bear down there. He doesn't seem to be interested in anybody except for eating berries and stuff like that. So it's like, yeah, I don't have any fear. So it's like, all right, cool. My tram and I just keep walking down there. We're just making as much noise as possible, just hoping that the bear would be off the trail by the time we get down there. Well, anyways, we get down there and we physically see the bear on the trail, and we're just like, oh crap. I was like, he hasn't left. So there's a total of us. Let me see. There was me, Gump, Juniper, and Info. So there's a total of four of us, including me. And I was the only one that had a pistol. What was funny about that, it's like they all asked me, it's like, what are we gonna do, Milkman? And I'm like, I don't know, I'm from Texas. We don't have fucking bears. Like, what do you want me to do? And I was like, what are y'all asking me because I'm the only one that has a pistol? So, anyways, I was start talking about statistics, and I told him I was like, well, we're a group of four. I was like, statistically, there's been no bear attacks on groups bigger. I think is it bigger than two or three in the lower 48 from grizzly bears. So I told him we should be okay crossing behind the bear. But all of a sudden, the bear started walking back and forth on the trail because to the right of us on the trail, you were just going straight up the mountain, walking through bushes, and it was nothing but berry bushes. You couldn't see anything. So that would have been the scary part: is that you're walking around him and you can't see where he's at. And then the left side was just like a straight cliff drop off. When that was going on, all of a sudden the bear caught a little bit of interest in us. All of a sudden, and the bear started walking towards us, and he was close enough where I could see his nostrils going back and forth. He was sniffing the air. He was sniffing us. Everybody all of a sudden asked me like what do we do? And I was just like, you got me. I was like, I guess everybody stand in a line and everybody wave your arms and everybody make like look big or whatever. I don't think the bear necessarily got scared or intimidated by us, but he started losing interest in us, and then he walked back up and started going back and forth eating the berry patches. And so we kind of just stood there out of fear. And then somebody on the other side of the trail saw what was going on too. So he was standing there and he was blowing his whistle, blowing his air horn or whatever. And the bear didn't care. It just showed he was another bear that was just used to humans. Another day in Glacier National Park. So we stood there long enough that another group walked up behind us, and I want to say there were a total of three. I think it was two. Well, I think it was three guys, and another guy had a pistol. And pretty much what ended up happening, we all ended up talking to each other, saying like, "Yeah, I got your back" or whatever. So we're over here walking beyond the bear. The bear's facing away from us, eating his berries or whatever, and we're making a bunch of noise, just letting the bear know that we're here. And I want to say the bear's probably no more than probably 50 feet from us, probably. Like he's right there. But it's like we've been standing here
Oh,
a long time. And I was like, it's either we move or we stand here all day long and hope that he moves. Uh, So we end up making a decision that we're all going to walk with each other in sync or whatever. So we're all walking across, and everybody has bear spray or a pistol. So everybody's walking like this behind the bear, holding their spray up like this, like they got a pistol, getting ready to hit the bear with mace. So like, what? There was probably, see, if there was two of us with a pistol, so what you had? So you had like at least five people with bear spray, just like ready to go. And then I had my pistol out, and then the other guy had his pistol out. So it's like this bear was probably going to turn the Swiss cheese and probably get hit with bear spray at the same time if he did anything. So we're walking across or whatever, like how have our guns drawn and everything else, and all of a sudden, like the bear for some reason shows interest in us, and he stands up on two legs and he looks at us,
Oh,
and we're all just like, oh shit. And all of a sudden, like he gets more scared of us, and he ends up shooting up the side of the mountain. It's like, whew, sweet baby Jesus, thank you, Lord.
oh, oh. So, what was it like to be that close in a grizzly bear looking right at you, and you could see that he's smelling you?
Oh, don't get me wrong, it was definitely a scary moment, but like at the same time, it's like what my buddy Info made the comment afterwards. He's like, "Would you rather experience that all over again, or would you rather live a safe life in a cubicle?"
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was like, I'll choose that bear experience all over again.
No, golly, and it's that's what it's all about, right?
Yeah.
Is those experiences.
Well, it's like journey or experiences like that. It's like that's where I kind of I don't know if I came up with the saying, but the saying just stuck in my head where it's all about the journey, not the destination. Because that's what I care more about is the experiences. All the people you make friends with, all the people you sit around camp with and eat and share stories with. The brotherhood that you make. Whereas you got some other people that you more ran into on the Appalachian Trail where they were all about the trail. They didn't care anything. They were all about the purists. It's like well, if I go off the trail, it's like I might not be able to have continuous footsteps or something like that. And I'm like, I don't care. I was like, if there's going to be a group of hikers down there, it's like, let's go talk with them. Let's go share stories with each other, like be through hikers with each other. And I think that's like just one of those many beautiful experiences that you can experience on these through hikes, and particularly the Continental Divide Trail, because to my knowledge, there's no bear experiences like that on the Appalachian Trail. Probably not even on the PCT.
Yeah.
But that was like probably the most known experience that we had. Probably the funniest experience was when we were in, I think it was called Morning Star Campground in Glacier National Park. How the Continental Divide Trail hikers are able to get through Glacier National Park when it's already booked out, because apparently Glacier National Park campgrounds book out like at the beginning of the year, like fast. So what the Continental Divide Trail hikers do is they let them sleep where the horses are. So essentially, we're sleeping on horse shit.
I had that experience with Todd on the Guadalupe Ridge Trail at Aqua Dulce.
Makes for a good bedding.
Yeah.
uh, so essentially, we're over there where all the shit is at. So we're over there where the horses shit, and then the outhouse is literally right there. Actually, I want to say this is the picture of that. Well, the campground going down to it, or that's the trail going down to it. I think it's called Morning Star. We're camping right next to the outhouse, and it's like, I don't know, I'm taking a guess. So it's probably like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and we're separated from all the other campers. It's just us CDT hikers, but we have everybody. We have the foot traffic going to the outhouse. So I'm laying there, whatever, and I can hear the spring loading up or whatever when they're opening up the outhouse door. You hear that whatever. So I'm like, all right, it's just somebody going to the bathroom, whatever, no biggie. Well, give it like a minute or two later, because I'm assuming the lady just probably went to go pee or something like that. I can hear whispering, "Go away, bear! Go away! Go
Oh
away!"
no.
And my brain automatically wakes up, and I'm like, "Bear, where?" And as deep as my voice is, whatever, everybody in the whole camp heard it. I wasn't trying to yell. I was just like, "Where? Where's the bear at?" or whatever, and woke everybody up. So, anyways, everybody wakes up and everybody's shining their flashlights around or whatever, and everybody's on high alert. And it turns out all it was just moose walking through the camp, which
Oh,
really isn't a super scary moment, but like you still have to be aware. It's moose. They'll come over there and trample the crap out of you. Uh, but yeah, that was just funny though, because the lady was all embarrassed. She thought it was a bear, and then pretty much woke up the whole camp and everything else. But that was really the last more memorable. It wasn't scary. It was just funny. I guess more of like a
Yeah.
memorable moment with wildlife. Getting up into Montana, there was definitely a lot of wildlife. I remember going into Helena, Montana, and another trick that my buddy Cash taught me was just keeping a little speaker on you, always playing music all the time, so you don't have to yell all the time. Because I guess the sound that a stereo puts out, animals don't like it at all. But anyways, I was seeing animals left and right. It's like I was seeing moose, elk. Trying to think of everything else I saw. I was pretty much seeing all the animals I didn't want to see, and I was like, I don't want to see another grizzly bear ever again. I was like, I'll be content with that the rest of the hike. I was like, I don't want to see another one. Well, at this point, I hadn't seen one yet because Glacier National Park is in the trail. But I was in the mindset I don't want to see one at all. I will be totally satisfied if I never see one. So I was like, all right, well, I'm going to start playing my music because I am literally seeing all these animals and I do not want to run into one. So that was like another memorable moment right there because Helena, I believe, is the biggest town you walk through on the Continental Divide Trail, if I remember correctly. And so I was thinking, I was like, all right, the closer I'm going to get to town, less likely I'm going to see animals. Nope, complete opposite.
Yeah.
So that was another memorable moment of the CDT on that, just all the wildlife.
So tomorrow, Monday, I will have my nephew's girlfriend on the podcast, and she graduated about a year ago in environmental studies, and she's currently in Glacier doing some kind of conservation project. So she's going to come on the podcast. And what's cool is she's just now had her first backpacking trip in Glacier. So, trying to get, like how it was for her, and also like kind of the environmental impact that we have as hikers, and the kind of what she's involved with. So it's kind of funny that you're talking about Glacier, and then she's going to be on tomorrow night. So if you look back on the CDT, what are a few of your favorite towns or resupply stops on the trail?
Um, hmm. I don't know if I necessarily have a favorite town just because of the town. I more remember the restaurants, I guess.
Okay, what about restaurants?
So like Silver City when we got there, which is actually a pretty nice town. I actually really like that town out of all the towns I've been to in New Mexico. What I more remember about that was just like how hiker hunger was like starting to hit. That pizza that they have there, it was delicious. And I had a pretty interesting hotel. I remember having a conversation. That's what's kind of cool about the Continental Divide Trail. There's a pretty good chunk of the towns that you go through. They all have old haunted motels that have been, well, not motels, hotels that have been around for a long time. And I can't remember the name of this one, but I remember just talking to, I guess the desk help or the desk guy or whatever at night, and he was just giving me like the whole scoop and drama of the town, like where there's like a guy that has schizophrenia and stuff like that and goes around and chops electrical wires off and apparently the father of the guy or something like that, it's like the sheriff or something. So I got to hear all like the local drama on that, so that was interesting. Another town to me that actually stands out, well, actually it's not the town, it's the person that stands out, and anybody that's hiked the Continental Divide Trail in years past is Pie Town. Pie Town is where the toaster house is at, and there was a lady there named Anita, and she donated her house to hikers to stay in or whatever. She's been doing that for years. I just remember how awesome that lady was. Just she was like one of those ladies where she could talk to you and you just felt like you were already her best friend. And I remember like she treated my buddy Low Branch and I like we were more special than the other hikers because she took us into town to go get groceries, and she liked us enough that she was like buying us stuff. Like we ended up going to like a farmer's market with her, and she was buying me like muffins and stuff like that. And she's like, "Yeah, don't tell the other hikers about this." And I'm like, "All right, I ain't got no problem with this. I can keep a secret." Shh.
Yeah.
Uh, and but like all the stories that she could tell about that local area, like she was talking about like where she worked in the fire towers. That was what she did like when she had kids, is that she was a fire tower watch, and she'd talk about like all the stuff that she saw up there. And then she talked about like all the farmers that used to be around there and claimed that they saw aliens, and the government pretty much came out and told them like, hey, you need to keep your mouth shut or we're going to make you disappear. Well, some didn't keep their mouth shut, and those farmers just up and disappeared and nobody knew what happened to them. And then she kind of like knew the history of like the Native Americans there, like where the I can't remember every single story that she talked about the natives, but the one that stuck out to me the most is where the natives apparently they went and blocked off all the spring water to make the white people or the Europeans leave. So they purposely went out there and like choked off the area so they would make the Europeans leave the area. And then she was talking about and pointing out where you could see where New Mexico is definitely like underwater at one point in time because you could see the ridges on the side of the mesas and stuff like that. And just all the endless stories that she could talk about and just out of the kindness of her heart, you know. And I think that place or that whole trail kind of opened up my heart just because of people like her, like instant trust. Like she said that she didn't like driving when she was driving us, and I told her I was like, "Well, I know you just met me, but I was like, I got a CDL license, and it's like I'm considered a professional driver to the state of Texas." I was like, "Do you want me to drive for you?" And she's like, "I'd really like that." So a complete stranger to this lady or whatever, and she's over here letting me drive her vehicle for her. You know, I could have been lying and stuff like that, but she trusted me and then gave me a whole tour of the whole area, showed me a steakhouse where it used to be a legit steakhouse where you could go in there and point at what part of the cow you wanted to eat at, and they'd go back there and cut it off for you and start cooking it for you. But then government shut that down because I guess it was unsanitary and just all kinds of stuff. So that was like another town that was cool. Cuba, New Mexico was cool, but you just kind of just met like the kindness of the people there. But that was kind of a uh, quick run through because we were only there like a day or two, and then we jumped to Chalma, New Mexico. Chalma, New Mexico, that was like a whole different experience. We had to. I think we were in Chalma, New Mexico about a week because we were all waiting for our snow gear. That's when the Santa Fe National Forest caught on fire, and all the CDT hikers had to jump forward. So we got to meet the locals there very well, and we ended up staying inside of a hotel there. And I don't know to this day what happened, but pretty much I paid for like one night and then they let me stay for free. And I think they misbooked my room and I guess they felt bad or something like that. So I ended up getting like a whole practically week staying at the hotel and I did nothing versus my buddy Low Branch. He was doing side work for him or whatever to stay there for free. So I don't know how they hooked it up on that. But I teased them. I was like, "Hey, how was work? You know, I was over here busting it, watching TV, over here standing and painting walls." Uh, so that was fun and like talking to all the locals. That was kind of sad knowing that they weren't there when I went back with my buddy Cash. I went back with my buddy Cash to finish the mileage that we missed in the Santa Fe, but we finished in Chalma, so we went back to the same hotel. And when we were there, they were prepping it to put it up for sale. And I guess by the time we got back, it already sold and changed owners and everything else. So that was another cool experience that we experienced there. Colorado was like a little bit more cold hearted. There wasn't any towns that really stood out there. I'm trying to think. And then from there, Encampment, Wyoming, what was funny about that one, there wasn't anything that really stood out there, but it was kind of like the two different qualities of people that were living there, and there were two restaurants that were beefing with each other. There was one bar slash restaurant that was like jealous of the other bar getting all the attention, so they were making up all kinds of rumors, anything and everything that would, I guess, prevent people from going there, and they were just making up all kinds of stuff like, oh yeah, they're a gay couple and they have a baby and blah 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 this and that. Yeah, don't buy anything from them. It's like, okay, well, we're gonna pay for your burger here, but we're gonna go eat there later on tonight. We're gonna go check it out ourselves. And it was actually far better. Yeah, and it was actually far better food and everything else. And I was like, that's what it was. It was a jealousy thing. So that was pretty interesting in itself. And then like another town that I probably had fun in was um I think it was Augusta, Montana. What was fun about that one was it was just a small town bar, and to me, what was funny about that situation was all the local people were just like small town, like I guess poor country people or whatever. And they knew that we were Continental Divide Trail hikers because we're walking, they're all funky looking and wearing clothes that don't match and everything else. So we're being judged. They don't like us. They like one guy. asked me, he's like, "What are you? What do they call it? Are you getting mailbox money or something like that?" Like assuming like I was a person that doesn't have to work, and I was like, "No, sir. It's like I'm a diesel mechanic." So it's like he didn't like me, obviously, but I was still talking to him. Anyways, the conversation kept turning, and I think they had like political stuff on the TV and stuff like that. And I think they were probably talking about like the whole January 6th protest stuff or whatever. I think I made the comment. I was like, "Yeah, surprisingly, I'm not arrested yet." And like, "Well, what do you mean?" I was like, "Oh, I was there. I was there at the Capitol January 6th." And all of a sudden, I went from like the most uninteresting person in the bar to like, "Wow, you're an American hero" or whatever. Like people coming up and shaking my hand or whatever. Of course, I don't think I'm an American hero, but they were coming over there and shaking my hand, thinking I'm like the best person ever. Like, "Oh, thank you for your service" or whatever. And I'm like, okay, like I just went up there to go protest. Like I didn't have the intention. If I would have known what took place that actually took place, I wouldn't have gone, you know. So I was just telling my side of the story. So that was just like another different experience I had in that town. Every town had its own individual experience, but those stories I just shared, those are the ones that stand out to me the most. And like meeting the locals and stuff like that in those towns and like getting a different feel, like how I think that's what kind of made my social skills blossom from being an introvert to where I'm still an introvert, but I can act like an extrovert because I got put in those uncomfortable situations to where I learned how to talk and make everybody like me. Well, not maybe make me like me or make them like me, but like I can relate to them or find something, like that's something that not even trying to get into politics, but like something I learned to always bring up with everybody I came across with. We could all agree that the government was corrupt and we all believe they're corrupt. So that was like a beginning point. It's like, okay, you can find a conversation with just about anybody and have common ground with them. And that's what it was. Like there in that bar, I found a common ground with them. They were over there judging me, but like then I found something that I can relate to them about. And all of a sudden they liked me, and there's other experiences I came across, like hitchhiking and stuff like that. Like you'd go and get inside these people's car, know nothing about them, and just start a random conversation talking about anything and everything. I remember when a lady gave us a hitch, my buddy Low Branch and I gave us a hitch into Salida, and she ended up giving us like a whole tourist guide or whatever. Like she took us through this town where it's known for having like only one porta potty in the entire town. Like there's restaurants and everything else, but there's one porta potty in the center of the town. I can't remember the name of it, but yeah, it's crazy. And then we drove through where I didn't know there was sand dunes in Colorado, and she was talking about where I guess there's sand dunes and then some type of it was. I just remember the weirdness of it that there was like a rich community right next to it, and then there was like a super poor community right next to it. And she said there was like a hot springs in the middle of it or something like that, and pointed out like her favorite mountain in Colorado is called the Iron Nipple. I was like, oh, that's an interesting name. I was like, gee, I wonder.
We have Nipple Peak in Guadalupe Mountains.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always just kind of funny just bringing it up. It's like, huh, I wonder what made them think of that. What similarities?
So to me, like I think that um and I don't know, but like how difficult and how did you handle the navigation of the CDT? Is it like far out or gut hook or
It was primarily far out was the general direction, but as like I mentioned earlier, the Continental Divide Trail is definitely like you make your own hike. So a lot of us ended up using the app Gaia, and you would put the settings on there looking for like park trails or anything like Forest Service roads. So a lot of times we would find better or faster routes, or if like somebody put in the comments like, hey, it's dry here in this 30-mile stretch, like find another alternate. um, that's where you would find your own alternate around. But that was our primary way of navigation, was far out, and that's what we primarily went off of. But Gaia definitely did come in handy when it came to like finding better routes around stuff, like especially like if you were exhausted and if you were following far out and far out was telling you that you're going to have to go over these two passes or something like that, but then magically there was a road that went right around them with like no elevation. It's like, Yeah, let's do the road on this one. It's like, let's put some miles in instead of going over mountains that go nowhere. That's pretty much it. I never had to rely on any other navigation, thank God. That's something like you kind of do think about. Like if you drop your phone and you crack the screen, you're kind of just like, whoa, this is about to get really interesting. It's like, do I remember how to get to town? It's like, do I remember my mileage? And it's like a learning lesson too. Like the podcast you were talking about your plan B. What would be your plan B? And the plan B there was I had my Garmin GPS, but it's something you have to think about too before you leave town and go out. Definitely try to get like a good like picture of like what you're gonna be around. Like remember you're like, hey, like if I get close to here, I'm only so distant from this shelter, or they're showing there's like a house right here, or just trying to be aware of like what's around you and keep you alive. But obviously, if as the rule goes, if you already know you're lost, just stay still.
As we wrap up the Continental Divide Trail, I'd like to kind of touch on the Appalachian Trail that you completed. So, you were talking about earlier that you went out and did some sections of it and then, jumped on the Continental Divide Trail. What drew you back to trying to complete the Appalachian Trail? And that wraps up another exciting episode of the Trailblazing Texas podcast. We hope you enjoyed the episode today and stay tuned for our next episode where we will pick back up where we left off and guarantee to uncover many more hiking gems and share many more tips to enhance your experience on the trail. Until then, happy trails and happy hiking.